What makes us human? Beyond the biological similarities that we all share, humans are mostly recognizable by a series of philosophical and sociological commonalities that unites us all. Love, compassion, hate, greed, self-actualization, self-realization, and so on and so forth. All of those are important characteristics that are essential to comprehend the way humanity functions. Since forever ago, authors have used fictional analogies and metaphors to represent the human condition through a visage that isn't human at all. Like in the case of anthropomorphic creatures that might remind us of human characteristics, or humans that have forsaken what made them who they were only to become a twisted shell of their former selves, often retaining or accentuating some of their worst flaws. In that way, there is a certain dichotomy that is formed between what we consider the human condition and these non-human figures, or monsters if you prefer. Though this dichotomy can sometimes become a blurred line, because after all, humanity has always been capable of the best and the absolute worst. In that way, maybe humans are the real monsters after all. This is only speculation on my part, but I imagine that this subject probably somewhat fascinated Yoshihiro Togashi, the author of two genre-defining and critically acclaimed shonen manga, Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter. Big spoilers for these two stories, by the way. The Chimera Ant arc of Hunter x Hunter and a lot of the story of Yu Yu Hakusho perfectly displays this dichotomy between human and monsters, and how that line can be skewed one way or another. For example, how humans are capable of committing atrocities or just being downright disgusting, corrupted individuals, while monsters can learn compassion, trust, friendship, and other characteristically human traits. In a lot of stories, especially in shonens, main villains are often used as a demonstration of the deeper themes that the story is trying to showcase. In this case, I think that the younger Toguro from Yu Yu Hakusho and Meruem from Hunter x Hunter, other than being two of the most popular and subversive shonen antagonists, they are also perfect examples of the subject at hand. The concept of this video came to me after I realized that these two characters are essentially an inversion of each other. One of them was born as a human, thus as a weak and mortal being, and decided to become a demon to overcome his condition. And the other was born as this larger-than-life, unbeatable, monstrous figure that learned how to become vulnerable and also how to feel characteristically human emotions like compassion and love. Of course, I think that these similarities go deeper than just a reverse character arc structure. They also share a lot of commonalities that can be found within their supporting cast, and also their outlook on what it means to be the strongest. This video will be on mostly incoherent character analysis that tries to explore the similar aspects of these two characters within the perspective of their condition as inhuman monsters, and how they somehow go beyond that. For their story structure being an inversion of each other, I think it is pretty much self-explanatory. As I somewhat explained earlier, Toguro was a human that didn't want to get weaker from old age, so he decided to become a demon to keep himself in peak condition and in order to become the strongest fighter ever. And Meruem is born as the perfect and strongest life form, but eventually learns about emotions through his relationships with humans. One dies at his strongest point, while the other in his most vulnerable moment. The second aspect of these similarities is with the characters they are linked with. I have made up 4 categories for that aspect. I have named them the blind followers, the challengers, the controllers, and the counterpart. First, with the blind followers, are the other monsters that wholeheartedly believe in the absoluteness of the strength that the main villain showcases. These characters will do everything in their power to support them. In the case of Meruem, the most important ones are Neferpitou and Yuppie. For the younger Toguro, his older brother also fits that description. After that, there are the challengers, ambitious and opportunistic monsters who are convinced that if they stick around long enough, they would one day be sufficiently strong enough to defeat the main villains. In this case, Welfin, Melioron, or Leol, to name a few in Hunter x Hunter, and the other members of Team Toguro, so Karasu and Bui for Yu Yu Hakusho. After that is what I would call the controller. It's a character that uses the villain's strength to their advantage. So Sakyo for Yu Yu Hakusho and Shayapuf for Hunter x Hunter. This category is a bit trickier than the others because they aren't really one-to-one comparisons. Sakyo truly believes that he has full control over Toguro, even if Toguro is mostly unbothered and stays because he can still get what he wants while still working as a bodyguard. When it comes to Poof, he would probably fit in the blind followers category just like the other royal guards, but unlike the other two, he believes to know what is best for his king and will often work behind his back or lie to try to keep control over Meruem's life. In the end, they both end up dying while not having been able to successfully control Toguro or Meruem. You can't really contain or control absolute strength. Finally, there's the counterparts. In this category, I am putting Genkai and Komugi. While being much weaker and very frail in the case of Komugi, these two characters end up being a representation of everything that Toguro and Meruem are not. Toguro represents power, but also in a way greed or selfishness, and also eternal youth, while Genkai represents skills, finesse, selflessness, and the wisdom that comes with growing old. There is something beautiful about the prospect of growing old and passing on the torch to the younger generations, something that Toguro couldn't accept. In the other story, Meruem represents absolute power and might, but on a battlefield that he can't master, he becomes paralyzed when faced with someone like Komugi that represents strength of character, hard work, and intellect. Through the frustrations that come with being morally or conceptually inferior to characters that should be much weaker than them, Toguro and Meruem end up finding their toughest challenges. Also, there is the aspect of love, or friendship if you prefer, that are prevalent in their relationship, which adds a whole other layer of depth to that situation. Obviously, the main thing connecting Toguro and Meruem is their status as the strongest character in the manga from the time that they are introduced up until their demise. Absolute menaces that are way beyond the capabilities of the main characters. Even at the time of their defeat, Meruem was still way beyond the level of Gon, and Toguro was arguably still slightly stronger than Yusuke. Their strength is also in a way thematically tied to their monstrous larger-than-life appearances. They are in peak condition and are pretty much an embodiment of physical perfection, which contrasts with the humans that they are in conflict with, like Yusuke, Genkai, Kuwabara, Komugi, and Netero. Even if they all show weaknesses tied to their human conditions like old age and sickness, they also get their strength from their emotions and their humanity, unlike Toguro and Meruem. One thing that they also seem to share is their opinion on what being the strongest implies, someone who stands overwhelmingly above others through sheer compatibility and physical prowess, but that also one day leads to extreme boredom. There is a certain monotony that comes with being able to obliterate most people without even trying, and they both go through their lives seeking some sort of challenge. They both want to go against people at their best for entertainment purposes. Without that sense of contest, they feel somewhat empty inside. Meruem, even if initially frustrated, welcomes the challenge brought by Komugi and to a certain extent Netero. For Toguro, he clearly is in search of any form of challenge and goes out of his way to make sure that Yusuke gets as strong as possible, even to a point where he will eventually be able to defeat him. Even if it was his choice to become a monster, Toguro still remains somewhat human through his desire to be challenged. While Meruem, who thought that he was inherently the best at everything because of the circumstances of his birth, started to develop feelings he didn't understand at first after being challenged by Komugi. Much like a lot of the other Chimera ants, those unknown feelings were caused by the human aspect of their genetics, which influenced them more than what some of them could understand. In this way, Toguro and Meruem, while both representing the worst obstacle imaginable for our heroes, are also simultaneously a great showcase of character depth and emotional growth within a storytelling perspective. Also, the way they ultimately meet their demise is through the perseverance of their opponents, but also because of emotions such as compassion, love, and friendship. And though they both lived as threats, they went into the afterlife in a bittersweet fashion that truly subverted the expectations we had for them as villains. They may have lived like monsters, but at the moment of their death, they were a friend to someone, and maybe that's enough to say that they finally understood humanity. Not as something to reject or belittle, but as a source of power that has nothing to do with physical ability. So once again I ask, what makes us human? Well, I don't know. Maybe it has to do with our way of showing love and other emotions. Maybe it's about how we're constantly trying to surpass ourselves and others, or how we cope with the slow but unstoppable process of aging. Or maybe it's just about the inevitability of our impending death and how much we're trying to capitalize on the little time we have left. In any case, I hope that this was a remotely enjoyable experience and not too confusing. Thank you so much for putting up with me, and until next time. Bye.